Welcome back. Now, in March 2018, the Nigerian Senate approved the Federal Audit Service Commission bill after it was first passed by the House of Representatives. And just a quick recap. Now, this particular bill is one that has dragged on for a very long time. It was initially submitted to the 7th National Assembly, and despite assurances that it would be passed, it actually wasn't approved. After the failed attempt, the bill saw the light of day in the 8th Assembly, but hit a brick wall again after President Muhammadu Buhari withheld his assent. The audit bill, if passed, could actually help strengthen the government's anti-corruption campaign, because right now, the Auditor General's office is just being treated as another part of the government structure rather than being allowed to function independently. Among other things, the bill seeks to provide administrative autonomy to the Office of the Auditor General and also gives a time frame within which the federal government, as well as ministries, departments, and agencies must submit their financial report. It even recommends jail terms for officials who refuse to submit their financial statement for audit. The president has not given any specific reason why he is yet to give his assent to the bill, and for many stakeholders, his silence is actually costing the nation so much. Eze Onyekwere, who is the lead director of the Center for Social Justice, now joins me from Abuja. Mr. Onyekwere, thank you very much for joining us on the program. First off, I just want you to enlighten Nigerians on how very important this bill is.
Oh, very well, thank you. Audit is part of the value chain of public finance management. If you recall, you start the budgeting process from the medium-term sector strategies, medium-term expenditure framework, up to the budget that is approved in the executive, sent to the National Assembly for passage, President signs it, money is released, programs and projects are implemented, there's monitoring and evaluation, report back to the budget office. At the end of all these transactions, the Auditor General is constitutionally empowered to come and look at the books, to see, one, whether there has been regularity, whether the laws and policies like the financial regulations have been complied with, and whether there has been value for money, and monies have been properly brought into account, and no losses have been suffered by the Treasury. And then he reports to the Public Accounts Committee, which is a constitutional committee in both the Senate and the House of Representatives, who hold hearings and look at the issues dispassionately, so that at the end of the day, there is some level of documentation from which recommendations can be drawn up. And those recommendations will now feed back into the budgeting cycle to strengthen it, because you learn lessons from what you have done previously. If there have been mistakes, you make sure that they don't reoccur. But unfortunately, what we have is that auditing, there have been reforms in the fiscal responsibility angle, which is about drawing up the budget and even implementing it. There have been reforms around public procurement, which also relates to implementing capital projects. But that last leg, which is the audit leg, has been there, left unattended to. Like you may have heard, it was passed, the audit reform bill was passed during the Obasanjo administration, but somehow Obasanjo's government, President Obasanjo did not sign that bill into law. He did not give assent. Now we have a president whose mantra is anti-corruption. We were very much surprised that the last National Assembly, also both the Senate and the House, passed the bill, did the harmonization, sent it to the president. But unfortunately, the bill fell through the cracks. You know what? We are not discussing that the president came out to say, I will not sign in accordance with Section 58(4) of the Constitution due to XYZ reasons, or I will not assent due to I don't like this section or another, or coming out to say, okay, I will assent, I've given assent. There was no information, no message coming out, despite the fact from the presidency, despite the fact that there is overwhelming evidence that that document was duly transmitted to the president for his assent. So somehow there must have been challenges in between how whoever is in the presidency, maybe that may not like the bill, or for whatever reason, but it is a very, very unfortunate scenario and situation.
But what do you suspect could be the reason why, successive governments and the current government has been so reluctant now to sign this bill into law?
Well, it may surprise you to know that the Auditor General, as far as some of us are concerned, his office and his work should be the foundation of any anti-corruption campaign and drive. Because his office is not politicized. You have hardcore professionals, chartered accountants, auditors, lawyers, engineers who sit down dispassionately, look at the transactions, and particularly the financial transactions of government, to see whether they conform to laws, policies, and regulations, and where they see that a loss may have been occurred to the treasury, or where they see that money has not been properly brought into account, or even people or agencies went outside their mandate, they issue what is called an audit query. And that audit query is to say, look at what we have found, take the opportunity, tell us why you did what you did, or how we can ameliorate the situation. And when that query is answered and comes back, there is then another opportunity for them once again to look at the issue dispassionately and come to a conclusion which will be in form of audit recommendation. Unfortunately, what has happened is that the average civil servant or even public servant knows that an empowered auditor general will nip it in the bud, will stop a lot of the violations or a lot of the mischief in the system. So maybe there could be an aggregation of private interests masquerading as a public interest, which tends to stop empowering the Auditor General, because a properly empowered Auditor General's office will make it independent. One, its staff is no longer going to be subject to the nuances of the ordinary civil servants, because they will now be under the Audit Service Commission. And then the Auditor General will be specifically empowered to say, if you cause a loss to the Treasury, like it happens in Ghana, he can make a direct recommendation that you return that money that was caused as a loss to the Treasury. And if you refuse, neglect, or to implement that recommendation, your salary or your emoluments could be stopped. You could also be sent on suspension. You could be interdicted. So these are all the things that an empowered office of the Auditor General could do. And then we must begin to move beyond the financial irregularity and attest audit to greater issues like value for money audit, forensic auditing, computer auditing, even the gender audit, environmental audit. These are the kind of scenarios that this bill, if it becomes law, will now make a reality, so that we introduce greater value for money. So there could be the interests of those who masquerade as doing public interest, but actually what is important to them is their private interest. So as gatekeepers, they tend to frustrate such transcendental and radically transforming laws as the Auditor General's bill.
Now, without this bill now being signed into law, how bad is it for the office of the Auditor General? Does it mean that office does not carry out any form of auditing of government account, the accounts of ministries, departments, and parastatals? It has no force, so to speak, now, and cannot mete out penalties to maybe defaulting ministries and departments?
Yes, not that the office is not working. We are thinking of strengthening an already functional office, because it's not just enough to do an audit report, send it to the PAC. The PAC finishes its own report, review, does another report. Both the first one from the Auditor General and the one from the PAC gather dust on the shelves. That's not the kind of thing we are looking at. We are looking at an office that could give proper deadlines for responses to audit queries. If you recall, Mr. President and Commander-in-Chief, President Muhammadu Buhari, GCFR, did give instructions that audit queries should be answered within 48 hours, but it's been largely ignored. Nobody is obeying it. So we are thinking of a scenario when an audit query is issued. If you don't answer within the stipulated time, there will be a sanction, so that people will sit up and these things, they will begin to take it seriously. Because in some other claims, even the Auditor General has the power to subpoena, to ask an officer of any ministry, department, or agency to appear either before him or to an officer he designates. And whatever you say or whatever you do will be under oath, which means that even if you try to mislead his office or to lie, you will also be accused of having committed another offense, apart from the first one that office is being examined for. So in essence, we are saying, strengthen this office. Let's not just write reports, but let's get remedies arising from those reports. Because if there is no remedy arising from these beautifully and well-crafted reports that people spend sleepless nights on, this is what leads us to the scenario we have in Nigeria. If you look at the audit report of, say, 2005, 2006, 2004, and come and look at the one of 2016, you discover that it is the same set of felonies, financial felonies, and misdemeanors that are reoccurring. Because it's a question of you did it yesterday, nothing happened. So you are likely to do it today because you are not expecting any sanction. You are not expecting anybody to call you to order. And so it becomes a question of, even if the Auditor General is making any recommendation, in the, in the street lingo, somebody will say, now today, they write your report, now you get tired. But that's not the kind of experience we want. So that whoever has violated the law will get sanctions. And if you are not happy with what the Auditor General has said, you could go upstairs to the courts, which will summarily look at the matter and resolve it once and for all so that the financial system can make progress.
Now, you would expect that the president should be at the driving seat of this bill. He should actually be the one pushing to get a bill like this signed so that it becomes law, considering his anti-corruption posture. So the question then is, what exactly do you think, if you may conjecture now, what do you think could be holding him from doing so?
I do not sit, dine and wine or sleep with the president, so I'm not in a position to read what is on his mind. But like I do say, there are a lot of public servants who tell us they're working in the public interest, but actually they may be working in their private interest. It's possible the cabal around the president did not properly brief him.
Because obviously the president would seek advice anyway from some of these
yes, that's what I'm saying. Maybe they did not properly brief him on what this law is all about and why the urgency of why it should be signed. Or maybe somebody somewhere withheld it from him. Because if in other bills he has said, I am assenting, and the ones he did not like, he said, I am not going to assent because of ABC. But in this particular case, there was just total silence, even after the bill had been transmitted to him. So I suspect that the people around him may have been up to some mischief.
Well, let's just wait and see what happens. But it's really disturbing that a government that preaches anti-corruption would be dilly-dallying on a bill like this. But if the president chooses not to, the National Assembly could go on to override him, right?
Yes, but I think this bill came up almost during the time they were going for elections. Maybe they did not have the presence of mind to get that override. But you know also that the way our environment is so politicized, it was done during the Saraki era. I'm sure you know that even if for the most noble and most beautiful of intention in terms of a bill, there's no way the Saraki Senate could have gotten an override because the APC members were in the majority. So the question of national interest took a background. It was no longer in the front burner. So I think that what should be done now is that now that the National Assembly is just young, less than 2 months in the saddle, what we should be talking about is that this bill should be in the front burner. They should pass it in the next 6 months so that there will be ample time for them to reflect, if assuming the president doesn't want to sign, and to convince themselves and gather up the required strength and momentum in terms of numbers to have an override of the presidential veto in the event that happens again. But I don't see that happening because we intend to sensitize Nigerians. Nigerians need to be, it's not just about those of you in the media alone. The media should be talking about it. ICANN, ANANG, the professional accountants should be talking about it. Lawyers should be talking about it. I expect the churches to talk about it. I expect the market women and everybody, because this is about whether our nation will survive or not. We can't continue paying lip service to the anti-corruption drive when we are losing, when we don't have access to one of the most beautiful instruments. And that instrument is within our reach to simply acquire it and use it to make this anti-corruption drive a real program that works for the benefit of all Nigerians.
All right, Mr. Onyekure, thank you very much for your time and for joining us on the program.
My pleasure.
Is Onyekure, the lead director of the Center for Social Justice, and he joined us from Abuja. We'll take a short break and we'll be right back.